All right, everyone. My name is Jane Pajus. I am the SIFPAC support staff. Welcome to the 2024 Fall Mixer. This session is Building Infrastructure for Success. It's hosted by the GFPI team. The Good Food Purchasing Initiative team and all our partners are working to make the Chicagoland system more equitable and transparent with local, sustainable, fair, humane, and nutritious food. Our work includes shifting institutional procurement through the Good Food Purchasing Program, and also uplifting our suppliers with resources, such as an event like this. Thank you so much for joining Building Infrastructure for Success, featuring April Parms Jones. So I'm going to pass it off to April to introduce herself and get things started.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day. I'm April Parms Jones. I'm originally from Akron, Ohio, so I'm a Midwest neighbor. And I'm really looking forward to having you on the journey of building our own success and building our own infrastructure. So, I am originally from, like I said, Akron, Ohio, and I graduated from the University of Akron from the LeBron James Family Foundation School of Education. I have a Bachelor's of Science degree from there. And I am also an advisor for Pinehurst Consulting, and I'm a writer for Mother Earth News and Grit. And part of our talk today, we're going to be talking about Meadowlark Hearth Seed Company, just to talk about storytelling, an example of a business that's in sustainability in the seed business and using them as a spotlight. And I also have an article coming out in the next issue of Mother Earth News, and it talks about seed sovereignty and Meadowlark Hearth Seed Company, which is located in the beautiful state of Nebraska, also in the Midwest. So, we're talking about seed sovereignty to food sovereignty. So, in our food system, we always start out with the seed and the importance of the seed. And then that takes us into our journey of food sovereignty and within the food system. And so when we're thinking about building an infrastructure of success, we can really partner more deeply and more robustly with our seed companies and sort of align our storytelling and our ideals and our descriptors of food in our food system based on the seeds. And so when we're looking at the seeds, seeds always give us a great opportunity to see the terroir of the land and the beauty of the land and the distinctiveness of each seed and each seed variety, which goes into the food system and the food that we're able to harvest from those seeds. So we're going to talk throughout our talk about values and cultural values and the food system and descriptors and ways that we can build our success by differentiating ourselves throughout the marketplace. So when we're thinking about our food, it's important for us to really think about telling our own story and focusing on the kindness and the generosity within our food system. And I think that that is a compelling story that people are interested in and that really resonates with them. During the pandemic, we had more people in our communities that were kinder and more generous. And that was a huge increase during the pandemic, which brought us all together. So when we're thinking about building our success in the food system, focusing on those ideas of hope and generosity and kindness, and making those a foundational aspect of our business allows us to relate with our customers, allows us to build trust, which then allows us to build our own economic power and sustainability. When you're creating trust in your brand, trust is associated with a group level of positive outcomes, and it allows your customers to have resiliency to adversity. And so things are ever changing in our communities and in our time. And when we're building trust, we're allowing people to have extra resiliency and happiness and joy, which they can associate with your business and associate with how you run things in your food system and with your products, which is very, very important. Through this building of trust and resiliency and hope, you are creating a social support that will soften the effects of stress on your customer base because they have trust in you, they have education in the products that you are offering, and that allows them to have trust and that allows them to have support in their trying times. When we're thinking about creating this community, it incentivizes people to behave in pro social ways and in communal forms of cooperation and including acts of kindness. And so you're building this vast community of people who can advocate and educate and proselytize others about what you have to offer in your business and what value you are offering to them because you're able to build this sense of trust. So, if we're thinking back to the seeds, during the pandemic, we had a really hard time accessing seeds and food, and it really caused a lot of chaos. But when you had seed companies that were local and that were regional and that were values based, those smaller components and smaller companies had more seed availability. And so people were able to buy specialty seeds from these specialty seed producers. And they were able to build the trust to buy the seed because the seed was there and then the seed did well for them. And that is the same sort of principle that you can take into your own business of being localized, being regional, and really talking about how you are locally available to help and assist people to gain access into the food system so that they can live a healthier, more full life and lifestyle. So looking back to Meadowlark Hearth, they have a seed company pledge. And so when we're building out our infrastructure of trust and generosity, it's also important to be able to communicate with your customers readily about your values and the things that are important to you. And so I encourage you to put this information out, whether it's through your email list that you're sending out, your monthly newsletter, or on your website, any kind of interaction that you're going to have with your customer. You want them to have some keywords that they associate with you and key ways that they can differentiate your business from others based on your values and based on the trust that you are building with your customer. So Meadowlark Hearth Seed Company, as an example, they pledge to offer open pollinated seeds. So open pollinated as something that you can retain and keep in your memory that differentiates them from other seed companies. And then also working with biodynamic practices. And biodynamic practices are founded by Rudolf Steiner, and it's a whole system of growing that is very different. I call it the next level of organic. So, that biodynamic practices is also something that the customer can retain and keep in their memory to say, oh, this is something that is different. Then they talk about their commitments, that they work with a network of growers, and that they are focusing on having trust and understanding and a personal connection with the land. They're talking about purity of the variety, safety from genetic pollution. So, if you're looking at those keywords that would jump out to you, it'd be purity, it would be safety, it would be pollution. You don't want your seed to be polluted, you want it to be pure. They talk about they don't have hybrids, genetically engineered. They mention pollution again. And they also talk about their farm and their farm philosophy, about the animals they have and then the feed they use. And then they finally talk about how they've educated themselves, the trainings they've done, and their prior work within the food system of also they used to own Turtle Tree Biodynamic Seed, which is a company in upstate New York. And then lastly, they talk about relationships. And that is the key word at the end of their pledge. And so when you're thinking about telling your story and having a pledge and having communication with your customers, I really encourage you to think about your own business, but also the community that you're in and the words that are going to be insightful and interesting and connected for your customer base. So I really encourage you to use your regional linguistical knowledge and expertise. So, for example, in Akron, Ohio, we have the part of the land between the sidewalk and the street, and we call that the Devil Strip. Why we call it the Devil Strip, I'm not really sure, but that's what we call it. And so when you're thinking about your own regional dialect, maybe you call a particular vegetable a certain name, or maybe there's a sports team vernacular. So I just really encourage you to think about your own cultural legacy of your state, of your county, of your town, your municipality, and use those words because they have great resonance with your customer base. In Akron, Ohio, we had the Devil Strip. It was a news publication. And so everybody loved it. Oh, I read this at the Devil Strip and Devil Strip this, Devil Strip that. Had a huge connection with our community. And so thinking about the words that we use, it's extremely important in relaying the message that you want in telling your story. So telling our story allows us to create a prosperous future, and it also allows us to add additional revenue streams because we're engaging with people and people are influencing our story. And the people that we're influencing, they can have a huge impact on our business and they can create a tipping point. They can create new norms in our food story and in our food business. So, one book that I would recommend if you have time for additional reading is the book Tipping Point by Malcolm Gladwell. And he also has a new book that's out now think it's like Revenge of the Tipping Point, and it's kind of like an extension of the first major international bestseller hit. And if you haven't read Tipping Point, no worries. It's a great book, but the synopsis and the idea of the book is that it's little things that you wouldn't think of that create a tipping point in our minds where we are able to modify and change our behavior. So when we're telling our story, we're connecting with our customers, we're choosing our words carefully, we are creating a tipping point for our business, for people to proselytize more, for people to go out and talk about it more and influence others, and using their own sphere of influence to influence others, to educate them about our products and what we have to offer within the food system. So we're also using hope to motivate our customers, and we're really carefully aligning our communication to make sure that it's upbeat and that it's hopeful and that people can connect to it. I read an interesting study in the New York Times that I think around 70% of Americans are really concerned about the climate, especially as we've had so many um, issues with climate. We've had, hurricanes and damage and just a lot going on. And so people have a lot of climate anxiety. And the more ways that we as businesses can connect to how we are assisting our customers with their concerns of the climate, of how we're growing more sustainably, or how we're sourcing more sustainably, or how, when you have a localized food system, how your community is more resilient and secure and safe, because the food can just go from one place to another. You can truck things in, you're not waiting for flights to arrive. You have crops in the ground that you can quickly harvest and distribute out to people to give them access to food. And when we're also thinking about our climate, when you have an economy and a food system that is localized, it mitigates any outside impacts of things that may be happening around the country. So in North Carolina, they supply most of the IV fluids. And then because of the hurricane, it's been very difficult to get access to North Carolina to get those fluids. So when you have a localized system, you can incorporate that into your storytelling of how your customers are more secure, they're more safe, and more resilient to these climate disasters. When we're looking at revenue streams, I love the term revenue streams because you can have many, many streams coming in at once, and you can add new streams, or you can dam up a stream that's not working for you. So when we're looking at revenue streams, it's important for us to look at the trends that are happening across our country in the food system. And so I encourage you to, in your area, you have the beautiful city of Chicago, and you have really fine dining restaurants. And I encourage you to look at what are those restaurants saying about the food? How are they describing the food? And what items are they using within their restaurant food industry's food system? What items are they picking out? What items are they using, and how are they using them? And so that's a great resource. You can see that amaranth is in, butternut squash, maybe in, mushrooms, maybe in, a certain type of fish, a certain cut of beef, a certain cut of pork, a whole chicken. Are they describing the chicken as a regular chicken or an Amish chicken? So just thinking about the ways that people are using descriptors to describe food allows you to incorporate that same descriptiveness into your own food business. because when people are going to these fine dining restaurants or middle tier restaurants, or they're reading about a certain type of dish in a magazine, a food magazine, then they become aware of how the language is used and they're familiar with it. And then when they see it at your business, they already have a direct correlation and a prior history that you're able to build upon. So, really thinking about the food system in an interesting way, looking at menus and food trends. So, some trends that I'm seeing right now are mushrooms, native crops. So, in Ohio, we have the beautiful blue Ohio blue corn, right? And that's a beautiful color that's blue, and you can grind it down and use it as you would like in tamales and in tortillas and all sorts of ways, corn, grits, etc. Corn grits, all the different ways that you can use corn, you can use that. So that's a differentiating factor, which is interesting and fun. Also, we have the Ohio pawpaw, the pawpaw tree, and that's a native plant and a fruit, and it's actually native fruit of Ohio. And the pawpaw is a mix between like a mango, it's kind of like a custardy mango. That's how I would describe it. And we have the Pawpaw Festival, which is a festival that had 15,000 people that came from all over the country to celebrate pawpaws. And so just those are the sort of things that are interesting, they're very seasonal. So thinking about your own local regional economy and your own local regional terroir, what items are native and local and interesting that you can highlight. You can also talk about climate ready crops. That's another differentiating factor that you can incorporate into your business. And you can also do a value added, selling seeds, having jams, having jellies, dried herbs, ready made mixes that are shelf stable. Those are all ways that you can add value added into your business. So that goes into pairing items together. When we're thinking about pairing items together and capitalizing on market trends, I'd like for you to think about like wine and cheese pairings and how we go to a restaurant or you go to a friend's house and they are pairing up together this wine with this particular cheese. And they have a whole storytelling process about why they picked this wine, why this wine is wonderful and special, and then why they are pairing it with this particular cheese. And we in the food system can do the same thing. We can pair up the items that we have to sell together to make something new and interesting and fresh. And it gives us an opportunity to connect and to communicate with our customers about why our items are so wonderful and special and unique and nutrient dense, and to highlight and to elevate things and to pair them together with others. So I encourage you to look strategically at things that maybe are not selling well or are not doing as well as you want, and to look at it as a new opportunity to be able to elevate and educate and highlight this item to your customers in a new and a fresh way. When we're thinking about pairing items together, you can think about recipes of ways to pair things together. It gives you an opportunity to research what goes well with this, or just to get really creative and to combine two, poor or moderate sellers together and to create something new. So some ideas would be like a breakfast medley, like a bacon, egg, cheese, right? You have cheese from one farmer, eggs from another, pork from another. So, also when we're thinking about pairing items together, it allows you to partner with other farmers or other people in the food industry and to come together and to highlight both businesses and what you both bring to the table and your expertise and share that with the customer. It gives the customer a sense of wonder and education, and then like spicing it up, making it really fun. Another thing that you could do is like a French toast medley. So you have a bread vendor and an egg vendor. You come together, you sell a French toast medley. Maybe it has a recipe involved, maybe not French toast medley. You could do a bread and jam medley, a meat and veg medley, meat and seasoning, and then you can look to the marketplace for ideas. This is also a place where you can bring in your value added products. And another point of value added is that it stores well. So we're talking about value added. And the beauty of value added as we're building our own sustainable success for our business is that it is shelf stable. And it's something that you can make today and store for later. More and more people are really delving into this idea of shelf stable. Say your power goes out, you can have a slice of bread, butter it, and add some jam and have a snack, a lunch, a breakfast, a dinner, right? And so people are really getting into having things that they have on their shelf they can just open and eat and have nutrients and enjoyment. And so some shelf stable things that you can make that are value added would be pickles, jellies, pickled eggs, pickled vegetables, mixes like a bread mix, a pancake mix, a waffle mix, muffin mix, scone mix, mix it all up. And you can also make a gift basket of your value added products. People are always looking for things to do for like the holidays, for birthdays, for anniversaries, for Valentine's Day. I mean, all the days. So many celebrations that we have nowadays. So you can also do a value added basket based on the holidays that are coming in. And that also allows you to create memories with your customers and a return point that they can come back to you every year. And it allows you also to have some control of your own economy. You can sell baskets ahead of time during your low season connected to a holiday. And that will help you to grow your business, make it sustainable, and build out your infrastructure. So, we're going to have a question session. I'm going to pause for a moment and give you an opportunity to think deeply about what we've talked about and discussed so far. And are there any questions on how you can pair items? Are there ways that you have questions about partnering with other farmers? And that the ways that you can add value added into your production system, or any other questions you guys may have?
Hey, April, we have a question from Carmen. Carmen says, what are some
Yeah.
key factors to look at when developing a partnership? How do mistakes or failures, hold on, let me read that again. What are some key factors to look at when developing a partnership? How do mistakes or failures, I'm not sure what the second part of the question is. If you don't mind retyping that in the chat, but the first part of the question is, what are some key factors to look at when developing a partnership?
Yeah, I think that's super important. I think that partnerships are kind of like dating, right? Or marriage or a long term committed relationship. You want to have somebody that you share the same values, you share the same ideas about the world and how the world works, and you have similar business principles. And really taking the time to have that conversation, whether it's over the phone or texting or meeting in person, writing the person letters, really talking about like, how do you see your business and what are your values? What things are important to you? And then really digging in deeply about the financials. How is this going to work? What part are you going to bring in? What part am I going to bring in? And then have some sort of like milestones of, we know that we are meeting this marker when. And thinking about troubleshooting. What happens if so we'll give the analogy of, I make the bread and you have the eggs, and we're making a French toast medley. What happens if a fox comes in and eats all your chickens? Like what do we do in that sort of scenario? Does the person have a backup, like chicken friend, farmer, that they can utilize in an emergency situation until they can get their flock up? Or do you just discontinue the business? Or does the person have another component that they can add in? So, say that chickens all get eaten, which is totally possible. Maybe they have a backup supply of jam that they can bring in for that sort of emergency. And so instead of doing French toast, you're doing bread and jam. And then when you're talking about failure, thinking deeply and having a plan about what are the metrics that you are trying to reach? And then what do you do if you aren't able to meet those metrics? And what steps that you take? So, really just taking the time to get to know the person, making sure you have alignment on values, business practices, and concepts, and then really crafting deeply your planning and talking often about the plan, how you're utilizing the plan, executing the plan, implementing the plan is really important. I'm reading a really fabulous book. It's called Vulture Capitalism, and it's by Grace Blakely. She's an economist sort of person in that sphere of economy in the UK. And so she talks about our economy and how it's structured and our ideas and our concepts of the economy and then the realities of our economy. And the one thing that I really have taken away so far from the book, so many points, but the biggest one is planning, that we all have to have a plan for our lives. And if we don't have a plan, somebody else is planning for us. And so it talks about multinational corporations all have plans, talk about their plans, structure their plans, and then heavily implement their planning process, right, to increase their profits and their revenue and their clout and power. And so, as our own businesses, we too have that opportunity to really be deep thinkers about our planning. And I think that book is an Audible. I use the Akron Public Library and it's on Overdrive. And I think on our Overdrive, they have the book and then they have the audio version. So I imagine that it would be audio and Audible as well. But it's a really good book, really great seller, and plan. So we have to have plans. Are there any other questions? You can type them in. about the things that we've discussed so far? Okay, so we're going to go on. So we're creating a movement, mobilization, and bolstering our own economic growth. So I really encourage you guys to think deeply, like we talked about, and to have a plan and to be strategic and to align yourself with your cultural values and really curating carefully our language and really thinking about our own economics and our own economic power and how that is directly connected to social science, which means our social networks and our socialization with each other. And so, thinking about how we can bring in these concepts of joy and really building our own trust in our brand, you to own social networks, also networks of their community at large, and thinking about ways that we can increase the social connection within our businesses and within our customers. And so if that is aligning yourselves with different social cognitive connection with, that's one way to build your brand and your business. It's one way to get repeat year because people like to have those memories. And also thinking about your own cultural community. We have and there's also Polish Club has a partners. So connecting ourselves to our cultural heritage, our cultural holidays. We also have in the state of Ohio second Valentine's and so just thinking about your own local economy and local community, do you have some acts you can highlight and incorporate into your business? So align production closer to home. Their customers, you purchase from me, you're more secure, you're more resilient because you are near to me and dear to me and less in the marketplace. So it's less likely that they will have access to the things you want from your business because your business is near, it's locally live. So the New York Times did a really interesting article about Janet Yellen and how our companies across the country are being more of our production, are more and expanding workforce because that it's easier to access when it's already here compared to building it, growing it, purchasing it, and then it has to travel on the boat and then go up the Panama Canal, and then to an canal or one of the canals, right? You see that having this climate, and less things are able to get through the canal as quickly and fluctuate medium depending on the day. Impacts the customer, higher prices, less consistency. So opportunity for us to have great storytelling regarding our items are available for you. We're building trust, we're building resiliency that our customers can rely on. Regional pricing and creating a lucrative consumer market. I encourage you to really think deeply about how you're priced.
Hi, everyone. I'm gonna give April some time just to check her connectivity. A couple folks echoed that they're getting a lot of static, so I just want to make sure that everyone can hear this amazing presentation. So please give April 1 second. So April's gonna try going off camera. Sometimes that helps. So we're gonna try that out to see if the sound is better.
So, yeah, we're talking about aligning our values and thinking deeply about our culture. And someone had a quick question. I had time to look in the chat about how often you should update your story. And I encourage you, if it's possible, when you see a story that you think can align with your business, absolutely use it. So if you see a story about companies are now friendshoring, which means they are moving production closer to home, absolutely incorporate that into into your phrasing. I encourage you to do that. If you see people talk climate and climate mitigation strategies, and you use some of those strategies, absolutely incorporate that into your storytelling. If you see that a fancy restaurant is using beets in a particular way, you can highlight the way they're using beets, right? And incorporate that into your business. So anytime you see things that are trending or hot and you have access to the same products, incorporate that into your business because people are aware and they're familiar, and you're also piggybacking off of the marketing and the outreach that that company has done. For example, like the smash burger, all the restaurants that have been incorporating that into their business model and promoting it. You too can say, buy my ground beef and make your own smash burger at home, right? And so people already know about the craze about the smash burger. And so it allows you access right into that market. So when we're thinking about pricing, think about your customer and where you are and the things that are motivating them. So example I like to give is I lived in the South for a while. And in the South, it's all about the story that you tell. So it's not about the price. People are not as price sensitive, but they are very much into what story are you telling me? Like, what is this beat going to do for my, like, what can I tell my friends about this beat? The colors of the beat, the characteristics of the beat. It's about the storytelling. Then you go up to the Northeast, and maybe it's about what is this beat going to do for my health? Is it going to make me more competitive? What benefit is it going to give to me? Is it going to allow me to live longer? You go to the West Coast, maybe it's about what will this beat, what attributes will this beat give to me for my health? Will it make me more beautiful? Will it make me live longer? Will it, et cetera, et cetera? What are the health components that are going to boost my immune system and make me feel better? And then this is just a grand characteristic, but of each region. You go to the Midwest, and we tend to be a little more price conscious. Like, how much is this? What is my value for the dollar that I'm giving you? And so, really thinking deeply about your own community and the way they view money, interact with money, and then what value propositions they have attached to the things that you're selling. And that helps you to really align yourself with the values and to build a community of trust where the customer feels as if, oh, yes, you get me, you understand my perspective, et cetera, et cetera. So we're going to pause for a brief second. Do you guys have any questions about how to communicate your values, what cultural values are unique to your area, and how you can create a more dynamic regional pricing, or any other questions? Okay, so what are the cultural values that are unique to your area? Sometimes a good starting point is a lot of times when we think about our cultural values, it's something that's like unseen. So later in the presentation, I'll talk about the book Cast, which is a book by Rachel Wilkerson, and it's all about race in America. And what I loved what she said about race is that we're all on the stage and we're acting out our parts. And so sometimes people of color have uncomfortable experiences, and sometimes you take it personally. But a lot of times it's that people have scripts in their heads about you, and then they communicate that, and then you have a script in your head about them, and you communicate that. And it's not necessarily personal. It's just we're all actors acting out on the stage. And so when you're thinking about your culture, a lot of times it's things that we're not thinking about. It's not active thinking, but you can use history as a resource. So you could look at PBS and your local history, right? PBS normally has a local history of your particular region, city, state, etc., and something special and unique about that. And that kind of gives you a perspective of the community that you're living in. You can look at the cultural holidays and see, okay, Who are these people? And then when you get into that culture, you can research more about that particular culture that is in your community and history of them. It could be historical history, cultural history, history of holidays, etc. And that kind of gives you more of a perspective. You can also look at the industries that are in your community. You know, if you're in Detroit, you have a lot of car manufacturers. In Akron, we're the home of Goodyear Tire. We have a lot of tire companies, a lot of manufacturing companies. And that also gives you a culture and a sense and a history of the people. And so there's a lot of ways that you can look at the culture. Sometimes it's hidden. You do a little research. You can also talk to family, friends, people in your community to get ideas. Are there any other questions? Yeah, Gary, Indiana, steel mill, and the home of Michael Jackson. So the music history, right? That's another fabulous point. You can also look at the music history. You know, if you go to the Midwest, so Motown, and how that relates to your cultural legacy or the fashion. You know, I always think of Detroit and Chicago. The ladies always had those fabulous furs all the way down to like your ankles. And I was just like, oh, I want to live like that. So there's lots of ways that you can look at those cues for the culture. Partnerships with others, resiliency in the supply chain. So, also highlighting your partnerships with other businesses elevates both of you. And then you can talk about how your customers are going to have more resiliency in the supply chain because two is better than one, and they have two access points for food and for security, safety, incorporating holidays and family traditions. So, just thinking deeply about the holidays that you have, the special holidays, the special events, and how you can incorporate those traditions into your own business to get your repeat customer time after time and to really create that sense of wonder for your customer. And creating a sense of wonder with the landlord. So that is giving a little something extra. And that is the tradition from Louisiana. And it's wonderful. Sometimes you may have a customer buying eggs and you say, I'm going to add in these radishes just for a little extra, just for today. And it's a spontaneous gift that you're giving to your customers. And you're also exposing them to something new. So if you have a new product that you want to get out there or a product that's not selling well, it's a great opportunity to give your customers an introduction to something. Normally, a landlop is just a little small something. It's just something small. So it's not like the full portion, it's a partial portion, and it brings in repeat customers, gives people a sense of joy. Showing compassion, empathy, and care to the seventh generation is a way to build a sustainable business. People have a lot of climate anxiety, as we talked about before. And the more ways that you can showcase to your customers that your business is creating wonder, creating care, and expanding the gift of food beyond their generation to the next, the next, the next, the next, to the seventh generation, and how you're building a long term business and you are caring for the environment and the community for future generations. Great way to show empathy and compassion and care and to give your customers a sense of security and joy. So, doing all these things allows us to create demand, to allow us to have control of when we want to have upticks in sales, and for allowing people to really be able to taste the difference. So the last few points I would like to incorporate in the talk is talking about science, thinking about our beautiful landscape of academic institutions across the Midwest. We have many, and really incorporating that into our conversations and our communications with our customers. It could be once a month. You could highlight a university and research that they have done on a product that you sell. And that allows you to connect with all those beautiful alumni that are wandering around in your community and are a part of your community and maybe a part of buying from you directly. And it allows you to build a sense of community and a sense of care, and it also allows you to build a relationship with that institution. You could reach out to the researcher and say, "Thank you so much for your work. I am in the food system business and I am elevating your research to my customers because I think it's that outstanding." And it allows your customers to have concrete ideas and concepts that they can proselytize and share with their neighbors about why your product is better, why they feel happier eating your product, why they feel healthier, why it's improving their health outcomes. It allows you to connect science with business with the food system, which is a very beautiful marriage. So you can talk about pasture raised eggs. One example, this is study from the Michigan State University. Grass-fed beef, the feeding of cattle, and then why this is impactful on the food system. These are some more studies for eggs, grass-fed beef. So by doing all this, we're able to meet the needs of the community, which is another important part. In my work, I work with the Ohio Farmers Union, and the Farmers Union is across the country and international as well. And that is given me as a professional a great sense of community. And in your businesses, you too are creating this sense of community amongst your customers, coworkers, and people throughout the food system. And that is such important work. So, my book recommendations are Power of Habit, which talks about how people create habits throughout their lives and in their communities. And you can incorporate this work into your own business and create habits of purchasing. Sacred Economics talks about our economy and the ways that we interact with our economy and the ways that we can make our own personal changes and to view our economy in abundance instead of lack. How to Be a People Magnet talks about the social connection component of business and how to build a community. Caste, we talked about, which is about race, but it also talks about the underlying factors of our communities and of our country. And it gives us a perspective of how we're all actors on a stage. And it allows you to see how culture is intertwined into all of that and the stories that we are telling ourselves. Hope for Cynics is a fabulous book that just came out. It's by a Stanford professor, and it talks about the surprising science of human goodness and how we should be more hopeful instead of cynical, because hopeful people live longer and have happier lives. And so that's an important component in business, is that we have opportunity to allow our customers to be more hopeful so that they too can be more successful. And Capitalism, which talks about the corporate crimes, backdoor bailouts, and the death of freedom. But what I love about vulture capitalism is it talks about planning, which we've talked about throughout our talk, and how important it is to super duper be prepared, but also to have a really firm, watertight plan. So that helps you to get ideas for planning. And this is information about Meadowlark Hearth. They're in Scottsbluff, Nebraska, and they're a biodynamic seed company. And so you can check out their website to see how they're doing their storytelling on seeds, which you can incorporate in the food system.